I bought a house for $1. Everyone laughed at me, but what I discovered inside shocked everyone. This was not something I could have predicted, and certainly not something I was prepared for. I was just an ordinary guy from New York with ordinary problems. Almost no money, no work, and life wasn't exactly exciting. All I wanted was to find a roof over my head and a little peace of mind. So, when I came across an ad selling a house for $1, I couldn't help but get curious. Of course, everyone thought I was crazy. "What are you, nuts?" my friend texted me. But I saw this as a chance. I was desperate for change, and this house seemed like my ticket to a new life. I came, checked it out, an empty shell really, but with a bit of a historical vibe. A rural area, a strange place, one that looked more like a village for abandoned houses, but why not? I had nothing to lose. I paid, signed the papers, and became the owner of this useless ruin. The next day, I arrived with my bag and a few things, ready to begin a new chapter of my life. The house, of course, was in horrible shape. Broken windows, a roof that creaked, and inside, it smelled of dampness and neglect. But I thought, this is my chance. I decided not to waste any time and start fresh. Walk through the empty rooms, slowly start fixing things up. Maybe make something new. Little did I know, this place held more than just abandoned walls and old furniture. When I entered for the first time and started checking every corner, trying to figure out what I could do, something strange hit me. Even here, in this desolate and seemingly useless place, I felt a strange tension, as if something wasn't right. Of course, I told myself that it was probably just late and I was tired from the drive, but I felt there was something more to it. I walked to an old wardrobe in the corner of the room and noticed one of its doors was slightly open. That was odd because the entire house, including its doors and windows, always felt like it was locked up forever. In the wardrobe, I found an old, beaten-up box. Nothing remarkable about it, but something told me this box was important. When I opened it, I found an old notebook covered in dust. Sometimes things like that don't catch your attention, but somehow I knew right away that this book was hiding something important. I sat on the floor and began reading. The first page was filled with strange numbers, dates, and symbols. It seemed like random notes, but on the second page, I found a note. "If you're reading this, you're here. Harold, everything is as it was. Don't open it unless you're ready for the consequences. Everything you find will destroy you." Those words stunned me. Who was this Harold? And why were his notes here, in this house? I knew that, perhaps, it was just the ramblings of some madman, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something important was hidden here, in this house. I kept reading, and I realized that this notebook wasn't just random scribbles. It was a plan by a man who seemed to be trying to hide something. What was it? Why was it so important? The next pages described how he and Lena had been trying to hide something in this house. At the end of the note, it said, "On the old path under the stone in the garden, there's a door. It leads to where everything will begin." I immediately remembered that stone in the garden by the house, where I found the photograph and the book. This was the place where they started searching for answers. I realized I had to go there. I ran out of the house and headed toward the path. With every step, the tension grew. When I reached the old garden, I immediately spotted the stone Harold had mentioned. It was ordinary, almost unnoticeable, but I could swear It was the hidden key. I started to lift it, and as soon as the stone moved, a small gap appeared underneath. I pulled at the edge, and a door beneath the stone opened as though someone had been waiting for my arrival. Inside, I noticed light, dim but still noticeable. I entered. It was a dark room, filled with old boxes and a metal structure in the center. The walls were marked with strange symbols, just like the ones I saw in Harold's journal. And in the middle of the room was a safe. It was old, just like the house, and its lock was so ancient that it seemed impossible to open without some special tool. But something inside me urged me to open it. I approached the safe, feeling like everything I did was somehow predestined. With each step, I realized that my actions made sense. I opened the safe. Inside, there was something amazing. Piles of paper, documents, photographs, books, all tied to that same great legacy Harold had written about. One document described a project he and Lena had been working on. It was a plan that could bring immense wealth, but also great danger. They were creating something incredible, something that in the right hands could save humanity, but in the wrong hands, it could lead to disaster. And then I understood. This treasure wasn't in money, but in the knowledge that was contained in those papers. Harold and Lena had hidden not just money or valuables, they had hidden power, something that could change the world. With every page, I uncovered more secrets. But then I heard footsteps. Someone was nearby. I froze. I could hear someone getting closer. Someone clearly knew about this place. I quickly grabbed some documents and shoved them into my bag. But this wasn't just curiosity. It was an instinct to protect this knowledge. I couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands. I quickly closed the safe and made my way back to the house, feeling the strange tension rise with every step. My mind was racing. What should I do with these documents? How could I keep them safe? When I got back home, I realized that I now had to make a decision that would change my life. I couldn't just forget about this. I knew now that I possessed something that could shock the world. But whose hands would it fall into? What would I do with it? I stood at the door, filled with doubts, but I knew one thing. I couldn't go back to my ordinary life. I had become part of this story, and now I had to decide whether to fight for its preservation or destruction. I stood there, clutching the documents in my bag, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. I had stumbled upon something that was far bigger than I could have ever imagined. Harold and Lena. These weren't just names in a forgotten notebook anymore. They were part of a hidden legacy, and now I was holding the key. But as the weight of it all settled on me, I realized that I couldn't just walk away from this. This knowledge, these documents, were more than just power. They were a responsibility. What I held in my hands could change everything. The only question was, for better or for worse? I spent the next few days trying to process everything. The house felt different now. It wasn't just an abandoned building. It was a vessel, a keeper of secrets, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was aware of these secrets, that I wasn't the only one who had discovered them. Someone was out there, watching, waiting. The very thought of it made me uneasy, but I knew I couldn't stay locked in that house forever. I had to figure out what to do with this information. The weight of it was unbearable. One evening, as I sat in the dimly lit room of the house, sorting through the papers again, I heard something. A sound coming from outside. It was faint at first, but it grew louder. Footsteps. Someone was walking towards the house. My heart pounded in my chest. I wasn't ready for this. Who could it be? Was it someone who knew about the documents? Someone who had been following me? I quickly grabbed the papers and shoved them into a drawer, hoping it wasn't too late. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. I held my breath, hoping whoever it was would leave. But then there was a knock. It was soft, almost hesitant, but it sent a chill down my spine. I had no choice but to answer. I opened the door, and there, standing on the other side, was a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, with a serious expression, and a look in his eyes that seemed both determined and cautious. He was holding something in his hand, a small package wrapped in brown paper. "You must be the new owner of the house," he said, his voice calm but tense. "I'm here to talk about something important." My first instinct was to slam the door shut, but something in his demeanor told me that wasn't the right choice. I hesitated, then nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He stepped inside, glancing around the room, before locking eyes with me. "I'm looking for something," he said, "something that belongs to my family, and I believe it's here." I felt a cold sweat form on my palms. I had no idea who this guy was or what he was talking about, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever he was looking for, it was the same thing I had found. The documents, the knowledge, the power. "You're looking for the documents," I said quietly, more to myself than to him. His eyes widened just slightly, a flicker of surprise passing through them. "You know about them?" he asked, his tone shifting, now more intense. I nodded slowly. "I know everything. Who are you?" "My name is Daniel," he replied. "I'm part of the family that's been searching for those documents for generations. My great-grandfather hid them in this house, and I've spent my life trying to find them. It's a matter of history, legacy, and a dangerous legacy at that." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. This wasn't just some random person. This was someone who had been searching for the same thing I had discovered. Someone who understood the gravity of what we were dealing with. But why had they hidden it? Why not let the world know about it? The more I thought about it, the more questions piled up. What was so dangerous about this knowledge that it needed to be hidden away for so long? "Why didn't you just tell me this from the beginning?" I asked, feeling a wave of frustration. "Why not just say you were looking for these things?" "Because people like you," Daniel said, looking me dead in the eyes, "people who stumble upon something like this don't understand what it means. And you don't know the consequences of it. You have no idea what you've unleashed." I felt a chill. His words weren't just warnings, they were a threat. I swallowed hard, trying to process everything he had just said. What had I gotten myself into? I hadn't meant to find any of this. It was just a broken down house, a desperate attempt to make a new start. But now, everything had changed. "You don't understand," Daniel continued. "There are forces out there, people, who will stop at nothing to get what's in those papers. And if you think you can just keep it hidden, you're wrong." I felt my stomach drop. The weight of what I had uncovered was starting to sink in. I wasn't just holding documents. I was holding the key to something far more dangerous than I had imagined. And now, The people who had been searching for it for years were coming after me. "We need to make a decision," Daniel said, his voice low. "Either you help me find what's left of this legacy, or we both become targets. You won't be safe." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to run, to get as far away from this as possible. But another part of me, the part that had already crossed into a world of secrets and danger, knew that I couldn't just walk away. The knowledge I held in my hands was too powerful, and if I gave it up now, I would never be able to live with myself. "I'll help you," I said, my voice firm, though my heart raced in my chest. "But only on one condition." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "We do it on my terms," I said, meeting his gaze. "I won't be used. I need to understand everything before I make any more decisions." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough," he said, "but be prepared. Once we start this, there's no turning back." As he left, I felt a sense of finality. Whatever happened next, there was no turning back. My life had changed forever, and now it was time to face the consequences of uncovering the truth.